You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 360.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're all doing well, and I am excited to be here, spending a nice day here in my cookbook bunker because it is raining today. Nice July rain and very humid and actually hot out at the same time. It feels sort of tropical here in Kentucky. One of the benefits of working where I do in my home, it's nice and cool, and excited to be here to talk to you all about recipes. Recipes are what I call the heartbeat of a cookbook. They are what truly set your book apart from every other work of nonfiction. And recipes aren't just instructions. They also contain story, they express your creativity, and can provide an opportunity for you to put your life's work and your recipes into words and create a legacy for all of the things that you have done over the years in your kitchen, or perhaps recipes that your family has developed and created over the years. So if you've been wondering how to take your recipes from just notes to something publishable, this episode is for you. I'm going to share 5 stages of recipe writing so you can see where you are in the process and what you need to do next. And this episode is brought to you by Recipe Week Live 2025, which is coming up in August. This is a brand new live 5-day event happening online where we are going to walk through each stage of the recipe writing process step by step. You can head to www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/recipe week 2025. Read all about what's going to happen in August. Get yourself a ticket, sign up so that you can join us for the fun that we're going to have talking all about recipes. Okay, so when I started my recipe writing journey, I actually was not a cookbook author yet. I learned to write recipes for a newspaper column that I was writing and publishing. Every month I submitted a story and a recipe for a local newspaper here in Northern Kentucky. And the recipes were things that I was doing in my kitchen, told stories about what was going on in my life at that time and what was going on around town and observations that I made. And I always shared a recipe. And most of the recipes that I shared were recipes that, of course, I had experienced making. I wrote them down. And at first, I guess the recipes were probably pretty good. The thing about recipe writing is you get better and better at it the more that you do it. So got really good at writing that column, writing that recipes. It was excellent experience for publishing, meaning publishing is when you make something public. You're not just holding it close to your chest, you're sharing it with other people. And then I started working with Ethan Becker, who is the co-author of The Joy of Cooking. And I had to learn how to write recipes in the action method, which was the style they used for Joy, where the recipe is written with the ingredient buried in the instructions at the time for which you need the ingredient. So if you have a copy of Joy of Cooking and you go and look at how they wrote their recipes, that's called the action method. Irma Rombauer started that in the 1936 edition of Joy, and she felt like it was a way to save space, maximize the amount of recipes they could include in a book. So that's the style that Joy used. And then I was asked if I had ever thought about writing a recipe of my own. I met the acquisitions editor from University of Kentucky Press at a fundraiser I was volunteering at. And I proposed the book to them. And then when I set out to write the manuscript, I had to write all the recipes for the cookbook and put it all in all the recipes in my own words. So this is what happens when we embark on food projects where people want recipes, is we have to write a recipe clearly enough for someone else to follow and deliciously enough that it actually makes sense and works for them in their kitchen. So I want you to think about these 5 stages that I have that laid out here for recipe writing. And I want you to think about your projects, your work, what you want to publish, and think about where you are in the process. Now, it's possible that a lot of your recipes are at one stage. It's also possible that you have various recipes at various stages. But the most important thing is that by the end of the project you're working on is that all of your recipes need to be in the final stage. And that means that they're publishable. So let's start with stage number 1. That's called the ideation stage. This is where your recipes begin. We all receive inspiration for recipes. Maybe you saw a dish on a menu at a restaurant. You found a seasonal ingredient at a farmer's market. You tasted something while you were traveling. The most important part for the ideation stage is observation and paying attention to what people say, what you eat, what people cook for you, what people are sharing, what they talk about, and to document these ideas. This even happens when people write novels. I was reading an ebook the other day about the habits of people who are novelists, and there's one writer that said that every morning he gets up, he goes to a local coffee shop, he gets his cup of coffee, he sits down with his notebook, and he pays attention to all the people and conversations going on around him. He uses this opportunity, this time at the coffee shop, as a way to get ideas for his novel. So the same thing is true with the cookbook. You guys, we are surrounded by food if you start looking for it. And maybe this is not something that everybody notices if they're not in the food space, but I see it everywhere. I always see recipes, on boxes, bags, menus, go to someone's house to eat. You go to a picnic, a potluck, everywhere there's food. And so start during this first stage keeping track of ideas. And I use, as you can imagine, a notebook in my kitchen. I have a dedicated notebook that's kind of like an idea notebook. And a lot of times what I'll do when I come home from the supermarket or the grocery store is I'll write down the ingredients I bought and I'll put to the side the things that I want to make this week. And got a couple new recipes I'm going to be trying this week. I wrote down all my ingredients. I've got those written in there so that when I go into the kitchen at night after work and I'm getting ready to do some cooking, I can decide what I'm going to actually prepare. And then I'm going to talk. Well, anyway, that's the ideation stage. So just pay attention. If you want something searchable, though, for your notes, you can take notes on your app if you're out and about, on an app on your phone. I like to use Google Keep. A lot of people like to use the Notes app in Apple. Evernote's another good one to use. Some kind of a note app that's cross-platform, meaning that I can access it on my phone and on my computer. Okay, stage number 2 is the development stage. And recipe development is a word that's used in the profession for where you transform your ideas into a repeatable process. You're tweaking ideas, you're tweaking ingredients, you're adjusting timing, you're refining techniques until you're happy with the results. Documenting is essential, and this is where we turn our intuitive cooking, which we often can do without a recipe, into a written process or a written recipe. I have a lot of students that struggle with this part because they cook so intuitively, and maybe they want to write a cookbook about intuitive cooking, but you can't teach someone to cook intuitively unless you have something in writing in a book that can kind of guide them along the path. So traditional recipes, when we start to develop them, have a list of ingredients and a set of instructions. And you need to have all your ingredients properly listed, and then all your instructions properly defined and spelled out so that people can get good results. Again, documenting is essential at this stage. Keeping notes on what you try so that you can recreate it later. Stage number 3 is actually the writing stage then. To me, this is where we take the notes from our kitchen and we go into a desk or our office area, our computer. We're stepping out of the kitchen and we're translating the things that we've cooked into words. We're creating the ingredient list, the step-by-step instructions that are really easy for other people to follow, but they need to follow your style. You need to write them in your voice. You need to add sensory language. You need to say things like golden brown, fragrant until it smells like whatever it might smell like. You want to let the reader know that you are in the kitchen experiencing the preparation of this food. And the writing part of your recipe and your expression of the idea is what makes your recipe copyright protected. Copyright laws do not protect an idea. They only protect the expression. So the way you write your recipe is the way you write your recipe. Recipe plagiarism is when we copy word for word the expression of a set of ingredients. And the way that I express my recipes, the way you express yours, the way that Dory Greenspan expresses hers, Julia Child expressed hers, and all the cookbook authors that I've had on this show, the way that we express our recipes belongs to each of us individually. So this is where you want to let your voice in your writing shine. This also is a skill. If you're new at recipe writing, please remember that if you feel like you didn't get the memo, you're out of your league, you don't know what you're doing, you're doubting your ability to do this, I want you to know that those emotions of feeling awkward and unsure come when we are doing something new. Think about something new that you've done. Maybe it was, if you're a parent, maybe when you brought your first baby home from the hospital, or if you've ever tried a new sport or a new craft like crocheting or knitting, or the first time you started to learn to cook. Whenever we begin something new, we feel kind of weird. We feel like we don't know what we're doing. We feel unsure. I'm experiencing this now in my own life with learning to play golf. I don't know exactly where the cart is supposed to be driven. I don't know when to get back in the cart and drive it across the fairway to find the ball, all the different clubs. I'm learning all of that. I am totally out of my element and it feels very strange. I could let the strange feelings stop me from playing golf, but I'm not going to do that because I know that the only way I'm going to learn to play golf is to be willing to feel the awkward emotions. And it's the same that's true with this stage, number 3 of the writing of your recipes. Stage number 4 then is testing. Testing means that you take your written recipes and you give them to another home cook to try in their kitchen. It's not enough to know that you can make a recipe one time. You truly want to see if someone else can follow the instructions and get the same result in their kitchen. I love the recipe testing phase of my cookbooks because I get to work with other home cooks who are generous enough to test my recipes in their kitchen. It's fun to hear what they have to say about the recipes. Some of them just test a few recipes and then they stop. And I've had other testers that test multiple recipes for me because they love to cook and they love to be involved in cookbook projects. So this is a really fun part of the process, but it comes after the development, after the writing, and then testing is its own phase. And then the final stage, let me say one more thing about testing. When things are tested then, if there's something that needs to be corrected, I would go back into my recipes and correct them. And then I probably would have it tested again, depending on how big of a change it was. And then stage number 5 is publishing. This is when we actually make the recipe public. We let other people have it and use it, and we share it with other people. We share it with family. We post it on a blog. We share it in a newsletter. We include it in a cookbook. We put it out on social media. Publishing is where your recipe leaves your kitchen and becomes part of someone else's experience in their kitchen. Now, there's tons of recipes out there, but your recipes will belong to you because you generated ideas, you worked on turning your intuitive cooking into a recipe with a set of instructions, a list of ingredients. You write it in your own words, you express it in your own words, you add a head note, you add a nice title, you get the recipe tested, and it's ready for publishing. This is the 5 stages of cookbook writing. And this matters because you are an amazing cook, dietitian, maybe you have a set of family recipes, recipe collector, and your recipes need to be shared. They deserve to be shared, and books are a perfect way to preserve your life's work in a book. It's also, writing a book is a great new thing for you to do. If you're at an age where maybe your family's grown up, you're perhaps thinking about retirement, or you're in retirement and you're looking for something new to do, and I think being a beginner at something is a great way to challenge ourselves emotionally and intellectually. Write a book and go through the process of being a beginner, feeling these awkward emotions, working through them, and having a tangible result at the end of that process. These 5 stages are what every cookbook writer needs to follow. You get better and better at it the more recipes that you write. But I think it's very important to remember that your recipes matter, your work matters, and taking the time to create ideas, develop them, write them, have them tested, and share them and publish them is it's been my life's work, and I think that it's something that's very valuable that you also can enjoy as well. So again, if you want to dive deeper into these 5 stages, practice them with me, I want you to join Recipe Week Live 2025. Again, we begin on Monday, August 11th. Over this 5 days, we're going to cover everything from ideation to publishing, so you can take your recipes from scattered notes to polished recipes ready for a future cookbook or publishing project. To register, you can head to www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/recipeweek2025. And that is it for today's recipe edition of the Cookbook Love Podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.